It looks like the US is going towards some kind of civil war with everything that is happening. So I wanted to check out this video from Moon, where Charlie Kirk's assassination will start the coming civil war. Let's check it out.
Charlie Kirk's assassination is a tipping point in America because Charlie was famous for bringing open, unfiltered debate to college campuses. He was in the midst of one of his signature prove me wrong sessions with his wife Erica and 2 children being present, when on September 10th a sniper assassinated him, just days after a Ukrainian refugee was also savagely murdered on a bus in Charlotte during a race-motivated attack, and all of this a year after Trump's attempted assassination, just around the 24th anniversary of 9/11, an attack that united Americans. And yet now these attacks are dividing America more than we've ever seen before. While most people were shocked by this, thousands also expressed their joy over his death. Some of the media even smeared him.
Charlie Kirk is a divisive figure, polarizing, lightning rod, whatever term you want to use.
And even the House couldn't agree to have a moment of silence for him, which is why this politically motivated terror attack might just be the one that tears America apart, as it seems a line has now finally been crossed in the country.
Yeah, I mean, the demons are fucking showing themselves, the ghouls, the people who seem to lack basic human decency. You can't even there was a woman that worked at Home Depot or something. They refused to print. There was like a print shop. They refused to print pictures of him so people could mourn his death. Like, people are sick in the head celebrating a man's death, a father's death. Yeah.
As his death is a window into how far American political discourse has traveled from division to something far riskier for the entire population. It's why around 43% now believe a civil war is at least somewhat likely in the next 10 years. As we see yet another young 20s politically radicalized guy trying to take down open discussion with bullets, whether it be Luigi Mangione, Thomas Matthew Crooks, and Tyler Robinson. And making a martyr out of one of Americans' most famous commentators is only going to radicalize everyone so much more. Because if you followed US politics over the past decade, you've probably seen him at least once, as he was everywhere from Fox News podcasts, college campuses, Trump rallies. He became one of the most recognizable faces in the modern conservative movement, building Turning Point USA at the age of just 18 into a massive operation by the time he died, with $55 million in annual revenue and over 350 full-time employees. Most people knew him for those campus debate videos where he'd sit at a table with a prove me wrong son and argue with college students. The clips went insanely viral, and on that Wednesday afternoon in Utah, Kirk was doing exactly this, something he'd done hundreds of times before. He was about 20 minutes into a session when someone decided the conversation was over, with a clean shot from 200 yards away straight into his neck. Quickly following this, President Trump ordered US flags at half-staff and called it a dark moment. And in the first few hours, we did see some genuine humanity shine through the shock. People who disagree with Kirk politically still offered genuine condolences.
His wife and children were in attendance, dude. Imagine being a 12-year-old, watching your dad f***ing die. Nobody deserves that. Not even Charlie.
We saw celebrities and politicians from all sides of the political spectrum coming out to denounce the violence. The Utah governor Spencer Cox called on everyone to stop hating our fellow Americans. Even his biggest opponents expressed some sympathy for his family. But that didn't last for very long, as people began to—
Yeah, that shit didn't last long. These people started to fucking dance on TikTok. You even had young politicians here in Norway losing their positions because they're stupid. And they dance and clown on his death. They lost their positions, and people are actually fucking disgusted here. Seeing how people behave.
Degrade him in all sorts of personal attacks and radical theories. People said he had it coming because of his views, and many even saw this as a win for the left. Or they just straight out used his death for some other point, all while those on the right demanded total war against the left. Then things became even crazier, when people soon realized when those taken into police custody were just decoys. The first was the 71-year-old George Sin, a local activist with a decades-long history of showing up to political events across Utah. Witnesses captured videos of police escorting Zinn away from the scene. A uniformed officer was then heard saying on the video he said he shot him, but I don't know.
Was that you? We don't know if it's him or not.
Despite a massive manhunt involving federal, state and local agencies, the actual shooter remained at large for some 48 hours until an extraordinary development. The suspect's own father bravely turned him in. Tyler had confessed the shooting to his father, and began panicking, realizing how screwed he truly was, looking for somewhere to turn to. And so his father persuaded him to meet a minister and marshal, who then contacted the authorities and took him away. According to officials at Thursday's press conference, Robinson had driven to police headquarters with his father and surrendered. It was also revealed this was definitely not a spontaneous plan. As we know by now, all the bullet casings in the weapon had messages including "Hey fascist catch," and whoever's reading this is gay. It quickly became alleged that he had some sort of affiliation with Antifa, the far-left group that led to things like Chaz and Chop happening. Robinson had also told family members that Kirk was just full of hate and spreading hate, and had mentioned Kirk's upcoming Utah Valley University appearance at a family dinner. It really just showed how deep political violence has penetrated American society at this point, but it certainly didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in a US more deeply divided than it has ever been since the American Civil War, and in this kind of situation, history has taught us time and time again that you only need a spark to ignite the whole toxic, volatile mixture. I mean, just look at how politically charged the coverage came out about his assassination.
Showing footage of people running from gunshots, MSNBC thought it appropriate to provide context. They called him divisive at a time while he was dying from his wounds.
And the investigation. Charlie Kirk is a divisive figure, polarizing, lightning rod, whatever term you want to use.
We've already mentioned all the people reacting to Charlie Kirk's death with excitement, but even mainstream broadcasters like MSNBC made comments to either justify or dismiss the severity. Their first reaction was to
I think many people have lost their jobs because of this shit, as they should. Like, you can't just be a sick fucking freak and, you know, blend in with the normal people. Like, no, you have to be outed. You have to see the fucking sunlight, you fucking ghoul.
suggestion that it was one of his own supporters firing a gun in celebration.
In which a shooting like this happens.
Yeah, and again, emphasize what you just emphasized. We don't know any of the full details of this. We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this.
They then had Matthew Dowd on the show claiming that Charlie brought this on himself.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups.
Bro, these people are so like, oof. I would not make any enemies right before a goddamn civil war or any kind of war. Are you kidding me? We humans, we are the people who remember the most for the longest. I don't fucking know, but the thing is, if you wrong a person at 10 years old, they will remember at fucking 90 years old. That's all I'm saying. Try not to be a fucking fuck-ass stupid idiot wronging everybody in your life, because it might fucking come around, you know? It comes around, goes around. Like, you can be fucked by being a dumbass. And you might lose opportunities, job opportunities, relationships, and in the future, maybe even your fucking life. Because maybe that will be threatened. Because the future is so fucking unsure, like it's so like you just don't know.
Groups. I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
He was later fired, underplaying what just happened and giving license to anybody out there who feels hurt by what somebody believes as an excuse to take them down. Even the New York Times wrote this obituary for Charlie, but instead of focusing on the Christian family man, they went on to claim that Charlie was a genius for using social media and campus organizing to build a following, which he then presented to donors and Trump-adjacent politicians to gain more resources and access. Or in other words, basically making him out to be a grifter. Even the Oxford Union president gleefully celebrated the death of Charlie. And now on the right, people want pure vengeance. Vengeance like you've never seen before. Which is why we need to see on the wider perspective what this really means for America. Utah Governor Spencer Cox called it a political assassination, but his words carried a deeper warning.
Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk.
At the FBI press conference following the capture of Tyler Robinson, he then went on to say ominously it was a watershed moment for the country.
History will dictate if this is a turning point for our country.
And that begs the question, what's next? What kind of watershed moment is this? Barbara Walter has spent decades studying how countries slide into civil wars, analyzing over 200 conflicts worldwide. Her research suggests America has all the warning signs of a society primed for a period of heightened violence. According to data published in her best-selling book How Civil War Starts, America's democracy score has dropped. That then puts the country in what some researchers call anocracy, the danger zone where countries are vulnerable to political violence. Now, people will always naturally disagree on when this started happening and which side of the political spectrum is primarily to blame. And it's no secret that the US political system swings like a pendulum from Democrat to Republican. But research from the University of Southern California indicates that each side is now further apart than the early 1900s. In fact, America has been more polarized for a longer period than any other major democracy on the planet. In the kind of conditions the US might be heading for, evidence suggests that the annual risk for civil war conflict reaches 4% per year. That seems low at face value, but consider that's a compound risk of 40% over 10 years, and suddenly it doesn't look so small anymore. Take Yugoslavia. In the 80s, it was described as one of the largest, most developed and diverse countries in the Balkans. Different ethnic groups lived in the same neighborhoods, went to the same schools, intermarried freely. It had been a functioning multi-ethnic state for decades. Then the economy started falling apart, and by 1991, Slovenia and Croatia were declaring independence. US intelligence predicted Yugoslavia would cease to function as a federal state within a year, and will probably dissolve within 2, and that the violence would be intractable and bitter. Over the next few years, more than 100,000 people were killed and 2 million were forced to flee their homes. Neighbors who had lived peacefully together for generations started slaughtering each other. And you can question whether America is really comparable to other countries that had civil wars, but the basic pattern is developing. Countries don't usually collapse overnight, they break down slowly, then all at once, especially when foreign hostile countries do everything they can to make sure this happens. And singular violent events are proven to accelerate the trajectory, even in historical events as colossally huge as the fall of Rome and World War I. But here's the thing though, we don't even need to speculate with historical parallels when we can see what's happening right now in America. Since 2024, approximately 2,000 National Guard troops have been deployed domestically. Trump signed an executive order directing the National Guard to create specialized military units to quell civil disturbances in American states, all to be deployed at his command. Retired Major General Randy Manner, a former acting vice chief of the National Guard Bureau, said the administration is trying to desensitize the American people to get used to American armed soldiers in combat vehicles patrolling the streets of America. Meanwhile, threats and harassment against local officials jumped over the past few years. The Capitol Police said they had more threats against members of Congress in 2024 than ever before, with even 2 attempts against Trump himself, when America was just inches away from Trump being dead. And then we can also look at how this division is affecting the population itself. Recent polling shows 65% of Americans feel exhausted when thinking about politics, 55% feel angry, and only 10% feel hopeful. Most troubling of all, 80% can't agree on basic facts anymore. Most critically, people oppose each other more harshly than ever. 43% of Republicans and 38% of Democrats hold very unfavorable views of the opposing party, up from just 17% and 16% in 1994. And this is where it gets so crazy with Charlie Kirk's assassination. When people live in completely different versions of reality, they start seeing political opponents not as fellow citizens with different views, but as existential threats that need to be taken out, all whipped up and catalyzed by our media environment that has basically created those parallel universes in tandem with social media. Take campus protest events, they regularly turn violent, require riot police and tactical gear to move people along, or the storming of the Capitol or the BLM riots. Depending on which news anyone consumes, they see completely different events. And we all know by now how social media and its algorithms play into this, as there's barely any money to be made from nuanced coverage that says this was complicated with multiple factors. Now you need 2 or more sides to contribute to any debate, but a healthy debate needs a middle ground, and that's what America has completely lost, mostly because of the way the media treats issues, and completely dehumanizes those on each side of the political spectrum. And while this isn't exactly new, it's getting so much worse in the last couple of years. And this sort of violence has a nasty habit of snowballing. Take the 2011 shooting of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. Within hours of the tragedy, both political sides were blaming each other's rhetoric for creating the climate that led to the violence. The shooter turned out to be severely mentally ill with no real coherent political ideology, who actually voted for independence and his friend said wasn't left or right, but that didn't stop the blame game for slogging on for weeks. When Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968, things got way worse. Riots erupted in nearly 200 cities within hours. 43 people died, 3,500 were injured, and 27,000 were arrested over 10 days of violence. And the significance of this though was that 3 TV networks basically told the same story to the whole country. People could disagree about solutions while agreeing on basic facts. But America no longer has that luxury anymore, as we can quite clearly see from the world's reaction to Kirk's assassination. It's a horrifying thing to see because back in 2021, MIT researchers working with the Club of Rome updated their modeling and found that we were on track for, quote, the terminal decline of economic growth within the coming decade. In 2022, they put out the latest study called Earth for All that basically asked what happens if we keep doing what we're doing. And their answer wasn't exactly upbeat. They ran 2 scenarios through 2100, one where we model through too little too late and one where we actually get our act together. The model through scenario shows well-being dropping by 40% in wealthy countries by the 2050s, with regional societal collapse becoming more likely as social tensions, food issues and environmental problems start feeding each other. Today we're already half through 2025 and guess which scenario we're following? Yes, it's not the optimistic one. And this is all before just the recent events of the last month. And while plenty of people think that these researchers are just professional pessimists who've been predicting doom for decades, their track record has actually been pretty solid so far. But whether you believe their projections or not, the basic point is that when societies are already stressed on multiple fronts, economically, socially, environmentally, they become way more vulnerable to what researchers call chain reactions of bad events. One bad thing happens, then another, then another. But it's why it's clear that Kirk's assassination seems to be a huge tipping point in America, adding so much fuel to the fire of a country where 80% can't agree on the basic facts, where political violence is getting more calculated and targeted, where to be in politics and give your opinions in America means you have a very high chance of being killed, where our media, politics and social media all then reward division over unity, where people are quite literally excited to see their political opponents get taken out. The question isn't really whether America can survive any single political assassination, but whether it can survive becoming the kind of country where political assassinations feel inevitable. Because the most shocking thing about all of this is that not that many people are even surprised. It almost just felt like something like this would happen, and it probably will continue to do so.
I mean, this shit is wild. It just keeps escalating more and more and more and more.